This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
Second step is don't let fear control you. That's what Joseph says to his sons. He says, or to his brothers, don't be afraid. It's the number one command in the Bible. It is. The number one command in the Bible is don't be afraid. And there are two types of fear that are mentioned in the Bible. The first is fear, which is like being afraid. As in when Adam told God when he heard him in the garden, he was afraid. It's that type of fear. The second is the fear of the Lord. And it was interesting, Janice asked me, I don't know if it was last Sunday or Sunday before last, how do you define fear of the Lord? Do you have one of those terms for defining things that you... And I finally came up with one, and let me give you this little acrostic for fear. F-E-A-R. Fear is faith enveloping awesome reverence. You see, fear of the Lord is different from being afraid. Fear of the Lord is reverence. In fact, the word is awesome reverence. That's what it means. And so when we fear the Lord, that means that there is this embracing of God, this awesome reverence for God, but it's motivated by faith. And what is faith? Trusting obedience to the known will of God. You've heard that over and over again, and you'll continue to hear it over and over again, because it's important for us to understand it and know it and really embrace what that means. Faith means trusting obedience to the known will of God. It doesn't mean that I close my eyes and step out of the dark saying, man, I hope this is right, unless that's what God told you to do. But if God didn't tell you to do it, then doing it is not faith. It's stupidity. And so faith is knowing what God's told you to do. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 11, where all of those people are listed, and it's considered the hall of faith, that's how it's referred to sometimes, is in chapter 11. All these people did this, and to them it was considered faith. And it was imputed as faith, is what King James says. And they were considered to have faith. And Abraham, Moses, and Gideon, and Noah, and all of these people, and all these things that they did. And they did all of these things, and they were considered to be men of faith. But if you look at every one of those where the example is given, God told them what to do before they did it. They didn't have to guess. God told them what to do. And so they just obeyed God. They were just doing what God told them to do. Faith is trusting obedience to the known will of God. And so if you're wanting to do what God wants you to do, if you're willing to trust God in the crisis and trust Him in the difficult times, that's faith. That's saying, God, I'm going to do what you want me to do. You show me what to do, and I'll follow through on it. I will do what you tell me to do. I just want to do what God wants me to do. And I'll do it as God reveals what He wants me to do. How is He going to reveal it? That's up to Him. That's His job. It's not your job. It's not your job to figure it out. Your job is just simply to obey as God reveals it. What a great way to live your life. You know, Marcia and I are dealing with, her whole family right now is dealing with her mom. Her mom fell and broke her pelvis. And so we're struggling with that. And she's in a rehab center right now, not too far from her house. It's really taken a lot of, it's just taken its toll on Marcia. She's really, really struggling with it because she's there constantly. And her mom has some minor dementia, which is really made worse because of the pain meds that she's on. So she's on these pain meds, and she's just really kind of like a 3-year-old, to be honest. And so it's really taken its toll on Marcia. Marcia and I were talking just a couple of days ago about, should we move her? Where should we move her? We were trying to find a place. She'd gone back in the hospital. It was time to get her out of the hospital and take her to a critical care place. And what were we going to do? We didn't know what to do. Every door seemed to be shutting on us. She just didn't know what to do. And it was really, really struggling. And I said, well, Marcia, and it came down to 2 choices. And she said, what should I do? And I said, I think the principle is very, very clear. If you are wanting to do what God wants you to do, and God has put His desires in your heart, Psalm 37:4, that if we seek the Lord and we seek to please the Lord, which is what we're supposed to do, delight yourself in the Lord, He will put His desires in your heart. In other words, He'll begin to motivate you to do what it is that He wants you to do. And if you're willingly obeying and trusting Him, and you think this is the path that you're supposed to take, then take it. And it's up to God to shut the door if that's not what He wants. Doesn't that make sense? If you're the child, God's not expecting you to be a grown-up, wise, old adult. You're the child. God doesn't expect you to know everything. He expects you to respond to Him as a child, just willing to do whatever it is that He wants you to do. And if you're headed down the wrong path, He'll stop you. He'll stop you. He's your Father. He wants to make sure that you go in the right direction. So if your heart is in the right place and you're seeking after the Lord, you're faithful, that is fear that is enveloping awesome reverence. You are fearing the Lord. You are just doing it God's way. The fear of the Lord is just simply faith enveloping awesome reverence. God, you are the focus of my life, and I'm just going to be faithful, trustingly obey you. And if you're headed in the wrong direction, trust me, God will shut the door. Or He'll change the path and bring you back around where it is that He wants you to go. That's the way God works. So don't let the fear of, in other words, being afraid control you, but let the fear of the Lord control you. Faith enveloping awesome reverence. Let that control you. And so Joseph is addressing the former kind of fear of being afraid. But what he's basically telling us, don't be afraid, be fearful. Have fear of the Lord, in other words. Faith enveloping awesome reverence.